What I've been working on since last Friday is a small game that I call Directional Bullets, is the current name for it. That's a placeholder name. It will be hopefully finished by what's today, Monday. I want it to be in a completed state by Wednesday, or a more complete state, like adding some basic sounds and stuff like that. But we'll see. So, this is the player character. Actually, I will pull up my Ace Sprite on. And I'll show you what all the so the brown ones are the player. So this is the standalone player. This is going up, right, down, and left. This is the enemy right here in pink. And then this is the player when it has its defense up with a circle around it. So that's an easier way to see what's going on here since I have the collision shapes in place, and that makes it. I have the collisions. I have the animated sprites, all the different things going on. And then each one has its own collision that it's dealing with. I have a defense timer going on, which is currently set to 10 seconds of defense. Then there are the stars that come in, which activate the defense. Get coins, and the coin animation looks like this. I've used this one a few times in a few different games. It's kind of an easy one to bring in for me. Is to just reuse assets rather than trying to make new assets every time. Enemy, like I said, is just that pink circle. It has just the pink circle. It doesn't do anything other than that. The player UI looks like this. This is your timer. This is your coins. This is your health. I actually did something kind of fun with the hearts, but I'll show you that in code. Level 1 looks like this. I have the player preset. And then each of these marker 2Ds in each of the cardinal directions indicates where the player is coming in. The background goes a little bit beyond how the screen looks. I have the screen in a square position more than the normal like full aspect ratio of the monitor because I thought that would be a little cooler for this. We'll see how I like it in the end. I have the game root, which holds the level. So far, I haven't figured out how to use the game controller that I set up, but we'll see. Right now, I don't need it. I haven't set up level 2 with its full deployment of things. This is currently what the main menu looks like. I want to redo the buttons for texture buttons. That way, it kind of looks a little bit like my other main menu that I had for a different game, which is this one, which is also on my itch account, which was called Crumbs. That was my first game jam that I ever participated in, was with this game. So I want to replicate a bit of Crumbs into this one, but make it fit the overall aesthetic, of course. Then I have my level selector, which I also want to replicate Crumbs with a little bit while keeping in the style of this game a little bit more. I'm currently working on You Lose. So it becomes this reddish pink. You get the chance to try again, go back to your level selector, or just quit altogether. And that's all the ones that I currently have pulled up. I think that's the majority of my scenes. Yeah, because I haven't really set up audio just yet. Yeah, those are all the scenes that I have in place other than my transition between screens. So I'll show you that here in a minute. But I want to show off what I have so far in my scripts, which is a lot more things than my scenes. So for the coin, I have it to where it's a class. I don't really use the class, but at one point I was, and I just haven't removed it in case it breaks something, because that's how that works. I gave it a speed of 50, but that's an export, so I can mess with that a little bit. But I have each of the character bodies at a different speed. So enemy has the fastest speed, followed by coin, followed by star, and then of course player doesn't have a speed at all because it stays in one place. But they're all character bodies. And what I have it doing currently, I found a thing by this person, Devworm, I think, who showed off being able to have like enemies follow the player, and I figured that was probably going to be the easiest way for me to implement what I wanted for the directional coming in without getting into like a bunch of if statements. So that's what this character body 2D is about. It's looking for player. So that's what this is, which is implemented in the global script. And then I just gave it its general velocity and move and slide, and that's why the coin, which is what we're looking at, is able to do what it does. And I'll, again, at the end of this, I'll show you everything of what it currently does. Enemy has a similar thing going on to it, but I also have it to where it activates this section, which it might not need to do, but again, I implemented it, it works right now, and I don't want to delete it in case it breaks. But I have it to where when it enters the group called player, it does globals hit +1, and then it Q frees itself. As you notice, I don't have it doing that with the coins. I originally did, but it wasn't working. But for whatever reason, enemies does. So we'll see. Oh, I have it to where it's built in is 50 for all of them, but currently coins is at 100, sorry. Enemy is at 150, and then stars is at 75. So I upped all of them again. That's the reason you put it into an export. So enemies works pretty similarly to coin, and then star works exactly the same as coin. And again, if you want to find out more about how this works, go to Devworm, which I'll have linked in the description below, specifically for the tutorial that helped me with this. And it's better implemented, or it's further implemented, I believe, in the player stuff. So let's go over to player. So all of this on ready, again, I have player as a class. Again, I don't remember if I use it anywhere, but I have it there just in case. So then I have the on ready for down, left, right, up, and defense, which is all these collisions. And that is so that way I can turn on and off their monitoring in the physics process, depending on which input is being used. Because I realized that was the easiest way to have that implemented. And then the block sprites is, again, so that way I can play the correct animation. So this is just our animator, or our animated sprite 2D is just what the block sprites is, which is this, which then brings up the defense, down, idle, and all that stuff. And then stars defense timer, which is what this timer is, which is set to 10. We discussed it earlier. And then in order for coin, enemy, and stars to work, I had to set up that the globals player body is this character body 2D. Otherwise, it would just try and track onto each other. And I'll go back to globals here in a minute, and we can look a little bit closer at what that does. But the physics process is pretty much the same thing over and over again, just depending on which button is being pressed, followed by the player area 2D body entered, which again takes in what the hit is from the enemy, it adds up the coins, and starts the star defense. I could probably go into enemy and delete this from it, but I'm scared to. So I haven't, and it doesn't conflict with itself as far as I can tell. So I'll probably leave it as it is. It doesn't throw up any errors, nothing crashes, so it's staying put. The star defense is this function right here, which adds the star, turns on the global defense, and starts the timer. And then turns on the defense monitoring, which is that circle that we have here. It turns that one on and plays the defense animation. And when that timer turns off, which is right here, it minuses the star, turns off the defense, and all the ways and turns the player back into idle. And then all of this is so that way it'll queue free on any of the rectangles, any of the defenses. It just queue frees itself because it's being blocked. And that's what all of these do. And then this one is specifically to where just enemies get blocked, but the coins and stars can still come through. Right now, if for whatever reason you have your defense up via the stars, which automatically starts, you can't turn it on, it just auto starts, sort of like in Mario. It will take in new stars and coins, but when it takes in a new star, the whole system starts over, so you start again from 10 seconds. But I have it to where the ratio and everything is different, and I'll show you that here in a second. Player UI, this is where some of the fun stuff, to me, comes in. But there is a on-ready for the coin count, the timer, and your hearts. These are all on-ready variables. I need to change this, hold on, to label. I like to have is label or is this, is that going, because it just makes it easier for me to know what it's supposed to be. And then Godot also doesn't run into issues thinking it's supposed to be something else when it's supposed to be what I've told it. So I have it in the process function without delta being used, but it's running every delta or whatever anyway, but for the update hearts and update coins. So if you get hit, if your hit is equal to 0, you have full hearts. If it's, I went ahead and used emojis for this. I might go in and change it to textured things, but for now, using the emojis is a great shorthand for doing this. Oh, I think that's what I'll do for this. Anyway, so you get hit once, it goes to a single black heart and 2 red hearts. Get hit twice, you're down to 2. Get hit 3 times, it goes to all black hearts, and globals player dead equals to true, and you have failed, which then activates the you lose screen. Now, if your hit count is -1 or more, or less, you get this cool thing with BB code that allows it to go to full golden hearts and does the wave, which I think is fun. And you get that by your coin count equaling 10. And that's where the update coins comes in. Actually can also update hearts at the same time. But that's all handled within the global script. Which is why it has the globals calls function regain health. And again, I'll show that to you in a minute. The on timer timeout variable for this has to do with this one right here, the level timer, because you're trying to stay in the game for as long as the level timer is set for. And right now it is set to 2 minutes for each level. I'm going to see if I can change it depending on what level you're playing, but I think I'll probably keep it simple and keep it to where each one is 2 minutes. And it just gets progressively harder, because right now, based on how I have the code written, that would be a lot easier. So, and then the physics process, checking out delta, just keeps up with the timer. So we have physics process and just process running. That is where the deployment works. So I have packed export pack scenes for the coin star, enemy, and player, and on ready for a timer. The timer, we'll figure out what the timer's for here in a minute because I don't remember. We're going to update that to where it's an is timer equals timer. And then this is the deployers, again, are these marker 2Ds. And then the deployable is all the things that can be thrown at the player. And then deployable chances, I found this, you use an array float, and then give it the numbers for each corresponding thing in your array. And then there's some more code that equates all those things together, and I'll show you that here in a second. But that is how that works. So currently there is a 10 chance of enemy, a 5 chance of coin, and a 1 chance of star. I need to go in and see if I can change it to percentages, because right now it converts it to percentages. And so I'm just essentially using magic numbers, which I'd rather not do, but it works. So in the ready function of the deployment, which is actually a node underneath the main level, and that's just to, like, the actual level itself does not have code. The only one that does is the deployment, and then I have an instance of the player UI attached to the level rather than having it attached to the player, because if it's attached to the player, it doesn't fit the full screen how I would like. It just goes right above the player, and then it gets all messy, and it's a whole thing. But in the ready function, this is where we are connecting the global timer, which is an auto load or global script. I pulled this from another script I had, and I will find the code tutorial that I pulled it from originally. It should be in my YouTube history, so it'll be easy to find. Pretty much every tutorial I use is through YouTube, so it's easy to find, and it's just a matter of throwing it in the description and showing it here on screen. And then it runs the function run deployable chances, and then the spawn random deployable, which has to do with these on ready functions up here. Oh, the timer is how often the deployable is deployed from the deployer. So there you go. That's what the timer's for. Finally remembered. So on level timer timeout, which is what this signal is connected to from the global timer. So if we go back to the player UI and look at the 2-minute mark that we have here, that's what that's connected to. It recognizes that in the level core, which is another global script, that level 1 is complete. It saves everything to the save data of everything that went through, and then it starts our transition, awaits the transition to finish, and then switches to level 2. I've been using the, what are they called? The UIDs for when I do stuff now, rather than trying to hard code it, and then I just leave a little note of what it's supposed to be. And I found that to work a lot easier, because sometimes I'll just reorganize every now and again. I try not to, but I do it. And then run deployable chances, which gets run in the ready function. When I run deployable chances, that is this one right here, this array, with the percentages or whatever. So it takes its size and compares it to the deployable size, which is the same. Now you can have this as an export rather than an on ready, but I knew exactly what my things were going to be, so it made sense to leave it as on ready rather than export. But in the tutorial I originally found for this, it did suggest exporting these arrays rather than having them as on ready. But I don't plan on messing with it too much in a way that needs to be exported. Anyway, if I was doing a different kind of game, then yes, I would recommend it be exported. But on ready works just fine for this case. Anyway, so then it compares the chances to the deployable via their size. And then if for whatever reason that deployable chances is not the same size as deployable size, it will resize deployable chances with bogus data. That bogus data will not necessarily break something, but it will make it to where the thing will not break because there's not the same amount of information in each array. So it'll just be like 0. It'll equal to 0, or in the case of the deployable, it will just equal to an empty scene. So that's how that part works. And then the elif is just the reverse of that. So if for whatever reason deployable is not the same size as deployable chances, it'll do the same thing. And that's how run deployable chances works. And then within this spawn random deployable, that's where all of the actual comparing the deployable to deployable chances works. And then it adds child to deployer, which is the left, right, up, and down 2D markers at every end of the timer. So it kind of just goes up into like that. Anyway, so spawn random deployable. So we get a variable of total weight, which is a float, equal to 0.0. And then for weight and deployable chances, which again is those magic numbers I'm using, it will do total weight, which is currently 0, and make it plus equal to the deployable chances. And then we make a random variable of rand, which would be a random float, equal to rand f range, which I always get confused as to what that does. Again, this came from a tutorial and I'm trying my best to remember how all of it works. I will link it in the description. But the rand is a float, which equals rand f range, which is a random float range, and it goes from 0 to total weight. So essentially, it's very similar to what this is, but it's different. So it's going from 0 to the total weight being, in this case, for the first run through, the 10. Then where were we? Here. Variable updated drop value. It's called drop value because what I was originally watching was like drop chances from an enemy. I should probably rename it, but it still kind of works in the languaging that we're doing. So, but I could do it to where it's updated deployable value, and that might be a better way to put it, but it's implemented, it works, I know what it means. And I have this video now in case I forget. I can come back to it and be reminded. Anyway, so then we update the drop value to a float, which equals 0. And then for I in deployable chances dot size, so this is taking the individual numbers, because originally we were just doing, okay, there's an array, it has 3 numbers, and we know that between those 3 numbers we're going 0 to the 3 numbers. So now in I, updated drop value, which is 0, plus equals deployable chances in I, so within the size that it is, if rand, which is up here, is less than equal to updated drop value, which we have here, so if it's less or equal to 0, it'll equal null, and then we return. Otherwise, we will continue with the variable deploy, which is a character body 2D, because all of my pack scenes are character body 2Ds. This can be changed to sprites or whatever, but most likely you're going to have it be a character body 2D unless you're doing custom resources, most likely. Equals deployable in I, and then instantiates it. Then we make another variable called spawn position equals deployer dot pick random. So that means that from left, right, up, down, it picks a random one, and then we deploy from dot global position. So we take the one that was instantiated from all of this up here. So whether it's the enemy, the star, the coin, this all determines which ones it's going to be. Then it turns it into deploy and instantiates it. And then so deploy global position becomes equal to the spawn position, which is that left, right, up, down. Its position, and then it adds a child, which is the deploy, and then it breaks. The break is to make sure it's not just constantly running. And so then it only runs every time the timer ends, and it picks a random one. I can get rid of all this. This was just previous version of how this worked that used the RNG. I just haven't, because sometimes I like having evidence that I did other things. It doesn't make for the cleanest code, but it means I know what I did previously. Again, I'm using Git. I know I can look at it, but this is how I work at the moment. So yeah, that is how the spawn random works. And then when the timer goes out, it starts it all over again. It runs the deployable chances and then spawns random deployable. And that is how that works for deployment. And deployment works the same way on every single level. The only thing that changes is the float array. So on level 2, it's a 15, 5, and then 0.5. So 15 of enemy, 5 of coin, 0.5 of star. So everything has changed by double, or in case of star, by half. I haven't had a chance to test out level 2, so I don't know if that makes any sense. That's why I want to kind of change it over to percentages rather than essentially these magic numbers. Because I think running with percentages is going to work better in my brain, but we'll see. I've been messing with level 1, trying to get it working, because that will give me the basic running product. And then I can expand from there. Game root, which is this thing, which doesn't do anything other than hold the levels and stuff like that. Runs off the scene switcher and some other things. So we have an export of string, which is the starting level path, which in this case I need to make a note is main menu. Let's capitalize that. Then it is 2 on-ready variables, one for the level container, one for the game controller. And game control is what should hold the player UI and stuff like that. But again, I haven't been able to figure out how to get it to work how I want. So it just gets held in the level for this point on until I can figure it out. It's not high on my to-do list. So then the scene switcher registers the level container, loads the starting level, and then it's supposed to register the game controller, which it does. I just don't know how to put things in the game controller. I'm sure if I looked a little harder at the level container, I could do that. Let's look at level scene switcher, which holds a variable for the level container, the game controller, and the last scene. Yeah, this is just where I am currently as of 3 days of work. So Friday evening, Saturday most of the day, and then actually only a couple of hours on Sunday because I had to go to the ER. So essentially only 2 days of work if we put it all together. So after 2 days of work, this is where I've gotten. But we have a function that registers the level container, which is then referenced over in the game root. We register the game controller, which is called in the game root. And then when we load the level, which is also called in game root, it gets called in level deployment as well for when we finish. Yeah, right here, scene switcher load level, and then we put in the string of the UID of what level we're going to next. So That's what load level is for. So if load level or level container is null, it doesn't do anything, and we just return. Otherwise, for child and level container, get children, and then queue free. When this works, just going from main menu to level selector, it puts in main menu, and then it finds the child within level connector by getting children. The children, or child in this case, just based on for child, is the main menu. It finds that, queue frees it, and then goes to pack scene. And if there isn't anything, it just says there's nothing there. Otherwise, it goes to level, packed, instantiate, level container, call deferred, add child, level. Which is all to say, from here, it deletes the main menu and then adds in the level connector. And that's it, which works beautifully. And that is how the scene switcher works. It is mostly just this top stuff at the moment that works, because load previous scene is not working. So, the next thing I want to show is the globals, which is mostly just holding variables. So like, who is the player, which is the class, how many coins, what is a coin, what is a star, defense, which is a bool, hit, which is an int, and if the player is dead or not. And then going back to that player is a character body 2D. And then how you regain health, which is if coin is equal to 10, hit is -1, and coin equals 0. I want to have it to where it's like an overall counter as well, but I haven't gotten to that point because I'm more concerned with other stuff. This function right here, you lose, will work just fine once I actually have the you lose section fully set up. Because it's just if player dead equals true, which we have as a bool up here, and it gets set somewhere. Hold on. Is it in player UI? Yeah. Player dead equals true. So then it double checks if player is dead. Transition, await the transition, and then switch to load level at the moment. And then that level will be the you lose UID. Global timer, which is a level timer that we have to create in here because there is no scene. It must be created within script. Remaining time, duration time, this equates to 2 minutes. Because timers work in seconds, you have to do 120 seconds, which is 2 minutes. I double checked. And then I have it to where it is ignoring unused signals, because that's what I had in a previous thing. I don't think I actually need it, but that is what I have. And then I have a signal for timer completed. In the on ready, it adds the level timer as a child to the whole system. And then we have level timer dot connect timeout callable to the self, which is the script on timer timeout. And then we have the timer prep and start, which just preps and starts the timer with making sure it's a one shot. The await time is time duration, which is the 2 minutes that we set up here. And then remaining time is equal to time duration, which I feel like is kind of self-explanatory, but remaining time we set up here as a float. And then time duration, again, is the 2 minutes, and it's just showing the tick down. And then the level timer starts. So once it's done all this, it starts the timer. And then on the timeout function, which we have called here, the remaining time should be 0 and emits the signal timer completed, which we created up here. And then the get remaining time just shows the time left on the timer. This whole thing is a little complicated for me to understand in a full way. I understand that it works and where it works, but I can't explain it further than I already have. but I followed a tutorial. I'll have that in the description for if you want more information on how and why, because I think it goes into that. Level selector, because we already went over the deployments. So level selector has all the different levels as buttons, and then a back button. So all these are buttons in the on ready. So you can see them over here. I have them in H and V box containers. So that way it looks the way it does. And then on ready, we have the save and load stuff going, which I'll show you here in a minute, which allows it to do the whole thing of graying out these other ones depending on if you have completed the level or not. So because level 1 is the only one that hasn't been completed, it is shown as being able to be played, but the other ones are also not completed, so it is dark. I followed a tutorial, again, putting in description. Level 1, all of these will look about the same. It's just saying which scene it's going to switch to, and it's going to have a little transition. I need to make the little notes here. Then in main menu, we have the main canvas, option canvas, and audio canvas. This all has to do with what gets shown and not shown at what time. So on ready, it loads all data. So this is when the game starts, essentially, because it's the main menu. It loads data. Then on play pressed, so that button pressed, it switches over to level selector scene. And again, it uses the transition that I've been using everywhere. On options menu pressed, it turns off the main canvas and turns on these two canvases, so options and audio. Eventually I'm going to set up the credit scene. On quit pressed, it saves all data and then quits the game. On apply pressed is where all the audio stuff gets saved and then goes into load data. So as you mess with the master volume, music volume, and sound effects volume, that's how that all gets saved, is by hitting apply. And then when you close the options menu, it turns main canvas to true, so it turns it on and turns off the other two canvases. And that's how that works. We already went over player UI, save load. This is where it gets a little more complicated. Again, I followed 2 different tutorials to get to this final completion, and I will show them in the description. Level selector stuff from. I'll pull up the other scripts from Global here in a minute that I haven't already shown you. But we start with a constant of where the file is going to be saved, which in this case would currently go to, if you have saved the game and exported it, it will go with where the game gets saved. Otherwise, it will go to your Godot. So I have Godot saved right here, but otherwise it's app data, roaming, then Godot, app user data, then you go to the game that you're currently working on. I'm working on a lot. But in this case, directional bullets, and then it'll get saved right here. I deleted it recently, so that way I can mess with it. You have to delete it every time you make a change to what is getting saved. That is very pertinent, because otherwise it will throw up errors. So I just periodically just delete it out of the thing just in case. But you say name your thing you want to save, and then show which thing it is. And in this case, for audio settings, you make an internal dictionary, and then do the master volume, music volume, SFX volume, and then you name your hit, coins, stars, defense, player dead, all based on the globals. And I've shown you, I think, in other scripts, how it gets saved, but that's how that works. You would then call saveload.content to save, and then you write it in. And then on ready, so when the game loads, it loads data. The load data is if not file access, file exists, save file, which we named up here. It tells you, hey, there's no file. Otherwise, it goes into file, save file, read. If file, the save file, has content as text, this is the JSON version of how to do this. It parses the stuff as a string via the content, which is the file get as text. It parses it as a dictionary because that's what we have it set to right here is a dictionary, which is the content to save, is equal to parse JSON. Parse JSON, of course, being the content, which is text. And it tells you this is the content being saved. Otherwise, the file is corrupted. If it gives you file corrupted, it means you changed something here without deleting the save file. And then it closes it. To save, it's a lot simpler. It just writes, it stringifies the content to save, it stores the string, and then closes the file. A lot simpler, but it's essentially just reversing each other. Like, as much as this feels a little complicated for a beginner, it's pretty straightforward. And then, of course, you lose is just doing transitions mostly. And then quitting. So then for the level core, you are just creating variables saying, hey, these are the levels I'm using, and they're all equal to false. Transition, so that's the transitions I've been using in the scene switcher this whole time, which is right here. No. So let's go to you lose, transition, scene. So instead of making the global the script, you make it the scene. And I make sure to write scene at the end, just so I know, hey, this is a scene, not a script. Because automatically you're typically using a script in your auto loads, not a scene. Not automatically, but typically. Anyway, so transition, you are just calling a color rect, animation player, creating a signal, and then making sure that the color rect is not visible. If it is being finished, you make sure to connect the on animation finished. Otherwise, you're calling transition, making the color rect visible, playing the fade to color. I say to color versus to black because I do different colors sometimes. I don't always fade it to black. It depends on the game. So I just say fade to color, which I feel is a little bit more intuitive to what you're doing. And then if it is fade to color, on transition finish, emit, so we're emitting a signal, and then we go fade, color to fade, so to nothing. And then if we are already in color to fade, color rect needs to not be visible. And that is pretty much it. So yeah, that's everything. So now I'm going to show you the game. So I hit play. If I hit play and then go back, it just shows level 1. And as you can see down here, it says loading previous scene is null because it just doesn't have anything in there. So then if we hit play, I currently have it set to WASD for the thing, so coin goes up as the coins get deployed. Right now we're getting a lot of coins. Now we're getting an enemy. And I wanted to make sure that there was enough color contrast to things. So the good things currently are yellow. The things we don't want are pink. So yeah. And then the enemy comes in. We may or may not get a star. We'll see. Because I have that set pretty low. But as you can see, the speed of things is shown pretty easily. One of the things I couldn't figure out for a while, still haven't figured it out, is sometimes things will come through around the same time and then they'll collide with each other and then it becomes a mess. And so I need to figure out how to make sure that those things don't touch each other, but can still touch the player. But as you can see there, we reached 10 coins and it went to gold. Now we got hit. We got hit again. Here's a star finally. And so now we're just immune. We don't have to touch anything. We actually have it to where you can't move at all until the defense is up. I need to set something on a timer, most likely, a visual timer, showing, hey, defense is about to be up. I might do some kind of animation. But yeah, those are some of the things I want to work on. We're about to finish this level and it'll go to level 2. And we fade and now we're on level 2 and we keep our hearts. I might change that, we'll see. But hearts and everything stay the same. And nothing is deploying. Interesting. Anyway, I will fix that later. It's not my main concern at the moment. My main concern is making it to where if you lose, you can actually go back. So yeah, that is currently everything I have. After about 2.5 days of work, using a lot of scripts from other games I've made, which I've gotten from tutorials and then made modifications to. I will do my best to link everything in the description box below. And yeah, I hope you had or have a great day and that you get to or got to eat something delicious. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.